I would like to add in cloud storage for my Veeam application to be able to back up to cloud. I've already set up a NAS connection, a local storage connection. Now I'm going to set up a cloud connection. And I'm going to do it through Azure, but the procedure is fairly similar in other cloud services such as Amazon AWS and Google as well. So I'm in portal.azure.com. You need to create an account at first. You'll have to have a credit card. You'll put in your information, and that way it can automatically bill you at the end of the month for any services that you create. Now, just creating the Azure account does not have any cost to it. It's not until you add resources, which is what I'm about to do. So I'm in the All Services section, and I'm going to click on Storage Accounts. Now, if you don't see Storage Accounts, just type it in the search box at the top, and it will take you right to it. Now, I don't have any storage accounts yet, so I'm going to create a new one. So you can see my Azure subscription is going to be automatically billed. So that's why it's important to put all the information in first. Now I need to add in a resource group. A resource group is just a way that you can organize various different billable clients if that's the way you want to look at it. So I've created a lot of different resource groups, but it's all been because of different courses that I've created. I'm going to choose the default resource group, US W3 for US West W3, and that's the location I'm going to go ahead and connect to. You can create a new one here if you don't have one yet, and it's a fairly quick process. Now I need to give this a storage account name. It cannot have any capital letters or spaces. I'll call it LIL for LinkedIn Learning 12, and now I'm going to choose the US West 3 for my location and continue on until we get to this performance area. Now, standard is going to be great for most scenarios, as you see here. If you go premium, it's going to be faster but more expensive, and we don't really need that for our backup. I'm going to click next. The bottleneck really in cloud backup is the internet connection. It's not the hard drives themselves. For what we're doing in Veeam Cloud Storage, I don't need to make any changes to the advanced section. And here's a security issue that you need to be aware of. You can either choose the default, enable public access from all networks, or if you know the public IP address, and you should know what that address is or subnet, then you can choose that information instead, and that will keep it from being accessible from everyone. Now, if you have a VPN tunnel to Azure, you can just choose disable public access and use the private access. Just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to use public from all networks and move on to the next section. And in this section, we need to uncheck soft delete. Soft delete is actually a great feature. It allows you to undelete anything for up to 7 days by default, or you can change that amount. And it allows you to restore any data that you have deleted up to that time. But for backups, it actually doesn't work if you leave that box checked. You'll get an error inside Veeam that says it's not supported. Click encryption. The default encryption is just fine. The custom managed requires that you provide your own certificate. I don't need to do that, so click next. And then I don't need to have any tags. Tags is all about who you're going to bill for whatever resource you're creating. And then once it reviews everything, as long as it doesn't find any errors, it will pop up the create button, and then we can go ahead and create our storage. If you do see any errors, then you can go ahead and fix those before moving on. And then once this deployment is done, it will pop up and say it's ready to be used, and I can go to that resource. And there's my resource being created. And anytime you create a resource in Azure, you're going to be brought to this particular location where you can see those resources being created. And if there's any errors, then you can fix them at that time. So before we go on into Veeam, make sure that you've gone ahead and created your Azure account. So go ahead, take a few minutes, create your Azure account, come back to this step, and then we'll continue on. I'm going to click on Go to Resource. And in the resource area, what I need to do is go to where it says Containers. I've got to create a container for my data to go in. So basically what I've done so far is like creating a hard drive, but I haven't created any locations for that data to go into. So I'm going to create a container by clicking plus, and I'll just call this Veeam. And I'm going to leave the private no anonymous access. So what that means is it's not going to allow anyone with no username and password in. So you're going to be required to have a username and password. And in our case, the username and password is going to be a set of keys and the name of the storage account. So I'll click create. And now that the container has been created, I can just go on to the access keys area. So I click on access keys, and we need two pieces of information. One is we need the storage account name, which I've called LIL12, and the other is we need this key. Now you can either use key 1 or key 2, it doesn't matter. So I'll click on show key and copy it. Now this key is super important security-wise. I'll have already deleted this when I complete recording this, but you don't want anybody to know that key information. You can copy this off to a notepad or someplace else if you'd like, and then you can paste it in when you're prompted inside Veeam. Now I'm all done with Azure, and I can go into Veeam and I can get started. I'm in the Veeam home area, but where I need to be is going to be the backup infrastructure area. Now you see this backup repository. I'm going to choose to add a new repository. You can see I've already got two different repositories, one for local storage and one for NAS storage. Now I'm going to add a new type of storage called object storage that you see at the bottom, and that is for cloud. Now there's lots of different types of object storage, and you may see this list increase over time. In previous versions, I only saw 3 of these options, and now I see 6 of them. So you can probably expect to see more as time goes on. I'm choosing the Azure storage. Now I've created an Azure blob storage, which is perfectly acceptable for this type of backup and restore. However, there's a couple other types of storage as well. There's Azure Archive Storage. Azure Archive Storage is the least expensive type of storage, but it's only good if you don't access it that often. And if you access it too often, and that amount of times is up for debate, then it could end up costing you a lot more money. So it's better to choose the blob storage, because it's perfect for general backup storage. Now there's this other one called Azure Data Box. That has to do with offline transfers. So if you're going to be transferring a large amount of storage you've already backed up off to Microsoft Azure, then you can choose the Azure Data Box, and it will walk you through the process for sending that data off to Microsoft Azure, and then they copy it for you so you don't use your own bandwidth. But in my case, this is brand new backup, so I don't have anything like that. So I'll click on Azure Blob Storage. And now I've got the object storage repository name. I'll call it Azure, so that way I know exactly where it's coming from. Now I can limit the concurrent tasks to anything I want. And that's a really good idea, because you don't want to end up using all your internet bandwidth in sending off data to Azure from Veeam. And it really depends on how much bandwidth you have. Typically, upload bandwidth is going to be slower than download, so you could end up using a lot of your bandwidth, which is going to be mostly upload when it comes to connectivity with Azure. Now I need to choose my credentials. First off, my region is going to be the Azure Global, but yours might be different. I'm going to choose credentials and click Add. It's asking me for 2 pieces of information: the name of the storage account, which I know is LIL12 that you saw earlier, and then it wants the storage key. So I'll paste in the storage key that I had copied earlier. And now I'll click Next. As long as it's successfully connected, we should see that Veeam container, and there it is. Now I'm going to click on the folder. I'm going to browse. And now I didn't create any folders. So I could create the folders in Azure Blob Storage, or I could just do it here. So I'll click on New Folder. I'll call it Backup. And I'll select that folder and click OK. Now I can click Next to continue. It's now checking to see which server I'd like to leave in here. Now I only have one server that's running as a backup server. I also have another server that is a Hyper-V host, and I don't want to mount it there. I want to mount this in my backup server. Now I have an instant recovery write cache folder. So if you don't have any space in whatever drive that it's recommending, go ahead and change that by clicking Browse. I'm going to leave the rest of this the way it is and click Next. And you can see everything here is as it should be. It says everything exists. I'll click apply. And as it's applying, just keep in mind, when you go to run a backup, you get the option of which repository, as shown in previous videos. So instead of choosing local or NAS, all you do is choose the cloud storage. And the repository was successfully created, and I'll click finish. Although backing up and restoring using cloud storage is slower than on premises, you do get the added value of protection from a local server disaster.